Alrighty, so I'm Pierre. I'm a field guide for the Last Word Kitara. I'm part-time field guide and lodge manager. So we run a little piece of paradise out here in the African bushveld, right on the Klaserie River. So the Klaserie Game Reserve is a reserve of about 68,000 hectares, and if you want to take that over to acres, it's about probably about 180,000 acres. It is part of the Greater Kruger National Park, which consists of many different smaller game reserves, as well as the Kruger National Park. It used to consist of farms. Now these areas would be farms of cattle or for agricultural crops and things like that. And this is a very good pristine area for citrus and for avocados and macadamia nuts. And quite a while ago, probably about 50 years ago, all the farmers started looking into opening the area up as a nature reserve. So as the Kruger National Park was thriving, they decided, let's drop our fences with the Kruger National Park. The Greater Kruger was born. So now you've got all these private game reserves that's expanded, and all these private game reserves, probably a good 200 to 300,000 hectares, has now expanded their borders towards the Kruger National Park, opening up all the movement for the animals between ourselves and the Kruger National Park, allowing them to almost create a bit of a larger micro migration area. So animals can move much more freely than they would have used to in the smaller private game reserves. Yeah. You know, it's always obviously the first way to start a good day is a cup of coffee, watching the sunrise, early morning, and that little brush of quietness before we wake up guests. Have our first little cup of coffee and just listen to the sounds. Usually that's where our day would begin. There's a lot of times things like lions or hyenas and things like that would call out, giving us an idea of where a potential adventure lies ahead. So from there on, after guests have come in, have a cup of coffee, we'll set off on a safari in our open game vehicles, looking for these animals. So then we'd start looking at things like tracks and sounds and, you know, just taking it slow, listening to what is happening around us, what noises we hear, what we smell, what we can feel with the animals and the nature around us. From there, we'd go through a lovely morning safari, come back for a nice hot breakfast, have a nice little relaxing day, depending on what's happening around the camp. We'll sort out a few things in camp, but otherwise have a nice little break. And then in the afternoon, we set off for another lovely safari. Usually we call it our sundowner safari. So around about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we'll set off and see what wonders the late afternoon holds in store for us. As you guys can hear in the background, we've got some owls calling. And that's one of the wonders that we tend to find more in the afternoons. So that's why we've got a safari early in the morning and late in the afternoon. Usually when your animals are the most busy and active, and different times of day, you get different animals coming out. From there we start making our way back to camp, and then where we usually sit around a nice campfire or in our dining room for a nice little dinner, and then it's off to bed for a fresh start the next morning. Having people coming in, they get to experience the true nature of this. So it's nice. It gives you a warm fuzzy feeling when people come in, and you're able to share those first experiences with an elephant walking past the car, or a lion roaring in front of them. You know, it's a feeling that you can never replace. It's a feeling that sits in your soul for the rest of your life once you've experienced it. And it's good for people from all across the world to come through here, to see what it is about and why we are fighting so hard to protect our wildlife and our biodiversities out here. Why we're fighting so hard to protect elephants and rhinos and things like that, where one of the largest commodities in the world is a rhino horn, which people believe have got medicinal uses, but it's the same substance as your fingernail. So why are we fighting so hard to protect our rhino species you know, it's not something you can, when you haven't been here and you haven't seen it, it's difficult to comprehend why it's just a rhino. But once you've seen it and you understand their role and what role they play out here, you start to understand, okay, but it makes sense why we're protecting a species like that and why it is so important, because once they're gone, they leave a gap in the biosphere, in the ecosystem, so with nothing to replace it. So it is very important for people to come through and see this. I mean, why wouldn't you want to see this? It's beautiful. I was very young. It was actually before I started guiding. I had a leopard walk towards us, and it was in a tree. And came down the tree, walked in front of the vehicle, and I was sitting in the left passenger seat. And this leopard came walking past us and sat right next to me, and looked directly into my eyes and started purring. And it's not a sound that you very often would hear out of a leopard's mouth. And I was that comes back into why I'm doing this. That was one of the captivating experiences I've had as a younger boy, that just grabbed hold of me and just opened up my mind about, this is why I want to share this. But I mean, there is so many stories I can tell you about things that I've had, but that is probably one of my most memorable sightings that I've had and experiences I've had. Yeah.